Okay, let's just jump right in. If you're a warehouse manager, you totally know this feeling. You train someone, they start making mistakes, so you retrain them, and somehow the same errors just keep happening. It's this incredibly frustrating loop. So, in this explainer, we're going to talk about how to finally break that cycle. This phrase really says it all, doesn't it? A cycle of constant errors and endless retraining. It feels like the reality for so many operations out there. But here's the thing, and this is important. Just because it's common, it doesn't mean it's unavoidable. Not at all. We're going to look at how to figure out what's really going on, and, even better, how to fix it for good.
And look, the stakes are super high. This isn't just about a few boxes in the wrong place. When your system is broken, you get hit with high operational costs from having to do things over and over. You get low task consistency, which makes any kind of planning a nightmare. And of course, that all leads to poor customer service. Meanwhile, your supervisors are just running around putting out fires instead of actually leading. And you know what the real killer is? The morale of your best workers just plummets because they see that mistakes don't seem to matter. It's a total downward spiral.
So to fix all this, we have to stop just treating the symptoms. We need to actually diagnose the disease. Let's dig in and find the real root causes that are driving all these problems.
Now, what's so interesting here is that these things are never isolated issues. It's a chain reaction, right? You have no structured onboarding, so new people basically learn bad habits from day one. Then you have no standard operating procedures, no SOPs, so every single person does a task a little bit differently. On top of that, you're not tracking performance or errors, and there's no clear accountability. So what happens? Training becomes this purely reactive thing you only do after a major crisis. These aren't just individual slip-ups. They are deep, systemic failures. All right, I know that all sounds pretty grim, but there is some really good news. We can start turning this ship around immediately. Think of this next part as your manager's first aid kit. It's full of quick wins you can use for an immediate impact. Here are 5 things you can literally start doing this week to stop the bleeding, and they flow together perfectly. First, you need a structured onboarding plan. That way, every single new person starts on the right foot. Second, you immediately start a simple error log. You have to know what's going wrong. But that data isn't for pointing fingers. It's to give you something to talk about in your daily huddles. From there, you create simple job aids and visual guides. Think checklists or photos to make the right way the easy way. And finally, you wrap it all together by pairing new hires with your trusted, trained mentors. See? Each step just builds on the last to create some stability right away. And this just shows how easy it can be to get started. An error log does not have to be some fancy, complicated software. Seriously, a basic spreadsheet that tracks the SKU, the task, the date, the person, and the type of error is more than enough. The whole point is to make your problems visible. You can't fix what you can't see, right? Once you see the patterns, then you can actually start solving them. So with those immediate fires put out, now it's time to fireproof the whole warehouse. Those first aid steps are absolutely essential to stop the chaos. And now we can use that newfound stability to build something that's actually going to last. In this section, we're going to look at the long-term fixes that lead to real sustainable success. This slide really lays out the massive shift we're talking about. The old, reactive way is when training only happens after a disaster. Staff kind of learn by shadowing whoever's around, and mistakes are either ignored or punished. The new, proactive way? That's where you have a formal library of SOPs for everything. You have a cross-training program to build a really flexible team, and your performance reviews actually track accuracy. But the biggest shift of all is moving from a culture of blame to a culture of ownership. So, we've diagnosed the problem, we've looked at the first aid kit and the long-term cure. But how do you actually make this stuff happen when the pressure is on? Well, this final section is the manager's accountability playbook. Think of it as a practical guide for the real challenges you face on the floor every single day. Okay, let's jump into a really common scenario. Your turnover is high, and your staff just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Where do you even start? The absolute first priority here is to stop the chaos and create some consistency. So you start with that structured onboarding program to make sure everyone starts from the same playbook. Then you bring in the error logs, not to blame, but to gather data so you can see where things are consistently going wrong. Those job aids and mentors, they're your support system reinforcing the right way to do things in the moment. But, and this is critical, you also have to take a step back and ask why so many people are leaving. High turnover and high error rates, they're almost always two symptoms of the same disease. And why does this all matter so much? Because when your training is standardized, you will see fewer repeated errors, and your new hires will get up to speed and start contributing way, way faster. It's that simple. Next question, and it's a big one. How do you design an error log that actually creates accountability without just making everyone feel like they're being watched?
The secret here is to make the whole system simple, transparent, and constructive. Yeah, you log the basic info, but the magic is what you do with it. When you review the logs with the team every week, it stops being a surveillance tool and becomes a problem-solving tool. You can say, hey, team, we're seeing a lot of wrong picks in aisle 4. What's going on down there? How can we fix this together? It immediately frames errors as a chance to coach. It's only after you see a clear, repeated pattern with one individual that you might move to more formal retrain. Because the whole point isn't to play the blame game. The goal of tracking errors is to create visibility and accountability while promoting learning. It becomes a tool for everyone to get better, together.
All right, let's tackle another huge one. How on earth do you make sure your training is consistent for every single person on your team, from the 20-year veteran to the person who started yesterday?
You know, consistency doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you have systems. It has to start with formal, written SOPs for all your critical tasks. That becomes your single source of truth. Then you use checklists to make sure that truth is actually being taught, both in onboarding and in refresher training. But a system is only as good as the people running it, right? So you have to train your supervisors to deliver the exact same material in the exact same way. And finally, you check that the knowledge actually stuck, with hands-on, practical evaluations. This is how you create one standard, one way of working.
The bottom line here is that standardized training just gets rid of confusion. When everyone is working the same way, from the same playbook, errors naturally go down, and your whole operation just runs smoother.
And for our last one, this might be the most important question of all. How do you balance this whole push for accountability with keeping your staff motivated, engaged, and wanting to come to work? This all comes down to building a culture of fairness and psychological safety. You can't just focus on the mistakes. You have to go out of your way to recognize and celebrate good performance. When mistakes do happen, your default reaction has to be coaching, not punishment. That's what builds the trust you need for people to start self-reporting issues, which is pure gold. It changes the whole dynamic from, I hope my boss doesn't find out, to, hey, we've got a problem, let's fix it. And when you tie that sense of ownership to actual opportunities for growth, accountability stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a pathway to getting ahead. And that right there is the ultimate payoff. Accountability actually makes your culture stronger, but only when your team sees it for what it should be, a tool for learning and improving, not a weapon for punishment.
So that brings us to the final thought I really want to leave you with. I want you to go back to your warehouse, look at your current operation, look at your systems, and honestly ask yourself this question. Is your system a tool for punishment, or is it a tool for growth? The answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know.